Hi everyone. So this is video number 1 on Ashtanga Yoga and healing anorexia. Thank you so much for being here and joining me for this 5-week series on healing. You should be really grateful to yourself for actually taking the time to view this, because this is the beginning of your healing. It's really important to acknowledge when we are stepping out of our comfort zone and admitting things that are really uncomfortable to admit, right? Because that means that we've already begun to do the first step of healing, which is acknowledging that there is something that is holding us in suffering and that we want to step out of that, right? So we're already empowering that healed part of ourselves, that wholesome part of ourselves that is within all of us. And which actually leads me into today's topic, which is what anorexia is from a yogic perspective, right? And so I was just saying that the wholesome you is here. It's the one that's brought you to this video, and that is the one that is going to slowly take over your entire being. You're going to become this healed, wholesome being that you are, your Atman, your soul, right? Your divine self that is the same within all of us. And so that brings me to what yoga is, right? Yoga is yolking, to yolk. It is unity. It's when two things come together and they become one. It's when the mind, the body, and the soul merge into oneness, right? And so in that oneness, in that yolking, in that coming together, we become wholesome, we become healed, we become equanimous, we become balanced, we become in harmony within and without. When we are living in the state of anorexia, right, which I'm going to take a moment of what that state is. The state of anorexia is a state of separation. It's living in a state of anxiety and stress and fear. It's living in a state of lack of awareness of the truth. It's living in a state of constant fear of losing control over your body, of losing control of what is actually inherently something that is bound to change, right? We learn through the practice of yoga, both through the asana practice, but through the study of texts, that there is the only thing that is changeless, that is forever going to be the same, is our purusha, our atma, our true inner self, right? Our soul, which is, as I was saying at the beginning, the same in all of us. That is the only thing that is not going to change. Everything else is temporary. So yoga helps us to come to understand and come to terms with this idea that nothing is going to be the way it is, that everything is temporary. Our body, our relationships, our objects, everything is temporary, right? And if we want to live a life free from suffering, we have to understand this, and we have to make peace with this, right? And so when suffering from anorexia, there is a deep fear of changing, right? You kind of hold yourself, you put all of your sense of I'm okay, sense of identity in the smallness of your body. And you fear it from changing. You fear that outside situation, outside elements, outside things that in a regular life someone would view as nourishment. The anorexic person fears it as something that will change what is known to be unchangeable, right? What you have established your identity in. And so your mind sends out these messages to your nervous system that it's in a constant state of fear of changing, right? And so all the actions that your body therefore takes, because it's led by your mind, is to protect yourself from changing. And so it's in a constant state of fight or flight. So living in a constant state of fight or flight means that your sympathetic system is continuously being fired up to response, and your whole system just kind of locks up. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a personal story about this. I had anorexia nervosa, which is a type of anorexia. And I was, I think, 17 that year, and I struggled with anorexia until around 25, 26. And you know, anorexia is something that will always be a part of you. But I remember the beginning really began to become really aware of my physical body, which I had never really thought about before. And I began to really feel this need of controlling everything that was a decision for my the development of my physical body. I got my cycle, my menstrual cycle, really late. I was 16, and I went from being a very tiny gymnast body person to having voluptuous curves, being of Italian DNA. And I really didn't feel comfortable, as before I would almost never be seen. All of a sudden I had boobs and I had, you know, curves, and I felt very seen, and I felt a really urgent need to hide myself, and I felt a lot of shame towards my physical self. I almost didn't recognize who I was anymore. And so I began to get angry at myself because I couldn't recognize the person that I was kind of living in, the vessel that I was living in. And I went to my mom asking her if I could do some kind of diet, because I felt that I was getting too fat. And never in my life, just to be clear, have I been fat. But it was just a different feeling of my body. It felt like it was bigger than I knew what to do with it. It felt like all of a sudden I was a woman and I didn't know what that was. And I never really had a relationship to my body. It was just something that brought me around and allowed me to relate to my friends. And we moved a lot when I was younger, and that year we had just moved from Houston to Spain. And so I didn't have many friends, and I really wanted to give an impression so that I could make the friends that I wanted to make in terms of looks. And I was at the time kind of like skater girl. So the clothes that I was wearing really didn't fit so well with my shape. So I began to feel a lot of shame. And I remember my mom making a comment as well about, you know, having to really watch what I eat, which I never had to before. So I got really serious about it, and we did this pineapple cleanse with my mom. And I remember that was the moment that I lost like maybe 3 kilos and got back to, you know, a place where I felt like I knew who I was. And I felt like I knew, like I had been given a timetable and like a list of things that I could eat at what times. So it felt like I had a structure that I could follow, and that I knew if I followed, I would be okay, right? Which is a key thing that we're going to talk about later, and why Ashtanga Yoga can help heal. And so I followed that religiously because I really wanted to feel like myself again. And after a month, I lost 4 or 5 kilos, I don't remember. And I felt like, okay, now I can be comfortable with myself. But then the feeling of being able to lose weight and being able to feel good about myself, and the feeling of like shedding was really good to my ego. Like I felt good about myself. And so without looking at it from a psychological point of view, but just purely out of how I felt, I began to continue to do this. And in my mind, this is where the anorexic mind just kind of like came in and was like, let me do get the best out of this. And it completely outsmarted me. And every week I would shed off something from that list, or I would, if it was like a whole piece of bread, I would take a little piece off and a little piece off and a little piece off. And within like a couple of months, I went from maybe weighing, I don't remember, maybe like 55 kilos to maybe like 45 kilos. And at that point, that's when my parents got really worried, because the behavior that came with that was one of what I was talking about, one of fight or flight. Anything that was offered to me, I would be really aggressive towards, because there was a plan that my ego mind wanted to follow, and anything that threatened that plan would feel like a threat. And so I boxed in not only foods, but people and relationships and situations that would that presented themselves as a threat, right? And so I hope that through the story you can see how there is this piece of the mind that's called the ego that begins to slowly take over. It finds like a little crack where to come in from, and then it just begins to generate all the messages that run around your body, right? And so the nervous system begins to act off of that, right? It begins to be very ready to attack and ready to defense. And so you go into this state of unrestfulness. And so to go back to the topic, what is anorexia from a yogic perspective? It is a nervous imbalance. It is a state of mind where the mind is experiencing a state of untruthfulness, right? It is basing all of its decision off of a place of fear, and it's gripping onto your senses. It's holding them, and it's directing them to take actions that are hindering. So in yoga, we'll learn to create enough space in the vrittis, right, in the fluctuations of the mind, in the content of the mind, so that the chitta, the mind, the conscious mind can rest in a space of equanimity and in a space of like tranquility and steadiness. And from that space, we kind of like we guide our senses and we control them, but in a way that's healthy, right? Whenever you are living in an anorexic state, your mind is the wrong side of the mind. The vrittis are actually taking those reins and controlling your senses and controlling them in a way that's leading you to a lack of health, right? And leading you to make decisions that are based on fear and ignorance. We'll explore those topics later. The kleshas, avidya is ignorance, asmita is ego, right? Raga is desire or attachment. So it's this desire to be less, to be in control, to be less. Attachment to rules that you create to keep yourself in this control state, in this unchanging state, right? The fear of gaining weight, of becoming bigger, of eating something that might change you. This is real. This is raga, and it's an attachment to this fear, and it's an identification to this fear, and to dvesha, which is aversion to anything that is going to take you out of the state of control. And finally, abhinivesha, we'll look at all of these later on, but like the fear of change, right? It's the main thing, right? Like I said, it's run by the sympathetic nervous system, so it's fight or flight. You don't breathe deeply when you're in a fight or flight state of being, right? You breathe deeply when your parasympathetic system is working, is kicking in. You're relaxed, prana is flowing, you're taking in life, you're resting and digesting, you're nourishing. When you're in a state of sympathetic system, your body is not nourished, your body is deprived, your body is always ready to go. So there's a contraction in all of your systems, and there's a lack of circulation, a lack of flexibility, a lack of movement, and all of this holds you in place, right? Holds you in the state of, I'm secure here, I am okay, I am not going to be changing, I am stuck in my ignorance, run by my ego, leading my life away from everything that creates discomfort and aversion. It's going to take me into anything that's that I can't control, and I live attached to this fear. And it's really hard to live in this state. It's really takes a lot of energy to live in this state of fear. So whenever you are established in yoga, you begin to learn how to have faith and how to trust your body, not your mind. And in that trusting comes a process of listening, and comes a process of communion with yourself. And this is when, that's this idea of yin and yang, the idea that you're bringing light where there's darkness, you're bringing breath where there's darkness, you're bringing detachment, love, compassion, you're bringing all these warm, nourishing qualities into a space that's been consolidated and hardened into fear, right? And with prana, with asana, with movement, with circulation, you begin to bring life into all these dark areas, and you begin to bring softness and flexibility. And the more you can do that to your body, inevitably this will begin to move into your mind, into your nervous system, without you being able to control it. Yoga is going to help us to see all these in the light and to slowly revert that, right? So that the mind can be established not in the ego, but in the true self, in the Purusha, in the Atma, and it can generate impulses that are allowing to be balanced between sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, so that there can be breath and movement and circulation, and so that you can be detached from fear and live in faith and compassion, and live in awareness that it's okay to ebb and flow and change. I invite you to take some time and journal. See where you see avidya, ignorance, where in your actions, in your relationships to yourself and to others, where you see asmita, where you see your ego playing out, where you see raga, attachment or desire to stay in this fear, in this state of mind, where you see dvesha, which is aversion, right? Aversion to what? When do you feel it? And abhinivesha, fear of change, right? What do you fear? What is your biggest fear? Why are you fearing changing? What do you fear changing? What will happen if you change? Don't make decisions. Don't judge. Just write the truth, right? If you meet the untruth with the truth and you begin to speak the truth to yourself, eventually you will turn into the truth. I promise you. Again, I am here for you. If you have questions, please email me at info@bblorenzetti.com. If you can't spell that, just go to my website, bblorenzetti, and you will find a way to contact me there. And check out some of the retreats that I have coming up. I'm going to Costa Rica in March, and with a small group of people, we're going to be delving into all kinds of topics to help you grow in your practice and in your life. I'm going to Portugal in summer, and Mallorca. Mallorca will be more of an exclusive retreat. I'll only take 8 people, and there's going to be a vegan gourmet chef for the group. So again, you can find all these details on my website. The best way to keep up with these videos and with everything that I send out is by signing up to my newsletter. I hope to see you next week. Have a good night.